The first time I saw them again, I didn't even recognize them. It had been 12 years since my parents left me at a foster home and never came back. I remember the way my mom avoided eye contact that day, how my dad's hand tightened on the steering wheel as he drove off. I was 13, old enough to understand what abandonment felt like but too young to understand why. And now, after all those years of silence, they were standing at my doorstep, smiling like it was Sunday brunch. "Sweetheart," my mom said, her voice dripping with fake warmth. "You look so grown up." They didn't ask how I'd been. They didn't mention the birthdays they missed, or the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering what I'd done wrong. No, they came because they'd heard about the inheritance. My aunt, the only person who ever treated me like family, had passed away 2 months ago. She left me her house, her business shares, and more money than I'd ever imagined. Somehow word got out. And like vultures circling something newly dead, my parents found their way back to me. My dad smiled the way con artists do when they smell opportunity. "We'll guide you," he said, as if they'd ever guided anyone but themselves. I stood there, numb, watching the ghosts of my childhood pretend to be my family again. Inside, my chest felt tight, that familiar blend of confusion, anger, and the desperate, traitorous part of me that still wanted them to care. But they didn't. Not really. They saw dollar signs, not a daughter. I should have slammed the door in their faces. Instead, I heard myself say, "Come in." Some part of me wanted to see how far they'd go. That night, I sat across from them in my aunt's old dining room. My mom commented on the chandelier. My dad talked about how we could manage our finances wisely. They spoke in wheeze, but all I heard was me, alone again, surrounded by people who never loved me unless it benefited them. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just listened, because I knew something they didn't. Tomorrow I was meeting with my lawyer to finalize something I hadn't told anyone. Something that would make sure they could never control me again. My name is Claire. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because what came next wasn't just revenge. It was freedom. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? The next evening they insisted on cooking dinner. It was almost comical. My mother in the kitchen like she'd ever boiled water for me before. She hummed to herself, trying to fill the silence. My dad poured wine, talking about family and fresh starts. Every word sounded rehearsed, like they'd practiced in the car before showing up. I watched them move around the house that wasn't theirs, the house my aunt had left to me. Every painting, every book on the shelf, every coffee cup reminded me of her warmth. She was the one who'd shown up to my school plays, who'd taken me to the hospital when I broke my wrist, who never once made me feel like a burden. And now, the people who abandoned me were sitting at her table, toasting to new beginnings. I played along. I smiled. I nodded. I wanted to see how deep their act would go. "So, Claire," my dad said between bites of pasta, "your aunt's assets must be a lot to handle. Maybe I could help manage them, just until you get settled." I looked up slowly. "I've got it covered." He laughed, that fake fatherly chuckle that made my skin crawl. Of course. But you're young. It's complicated stuff. You need guidance." There was that word again, guidance. I sipped my water and said, "You mean control?" The silence was instant. My mom put down her fork. My dad cleared his throat. "That's not what he meant," she said quickly. "We just don't want you to get taken advantage of." I wanted to ask, like you took advantage of me? But I stayed quiet. I remembered every voicemail I left at 14 that went unanswered. Every letter I mailed that came back returned to sender. Every night I prayed they'd suddenly remember they had a daughter. And now they had, only because that daughter was an heiress. I excused myself from the table, saying I had an early meeting. They smiled, relieved. They thought I was naive. They thought I was still that desperate, abandoned kid willing to do anything for their love. But that girl was gone. As I stood in the hallway, I looked at the framed photo of my aunt and me at my high school graduation. Her arm around me, her eyes proud. "Thank you," I whispered to her photo, "for giving me the power to walk away." Tomorrow my lawyer would hand them papers that would erase any claim they thought they had over me, not just financially but legally. And the best part? They had no idea what was coming. When I returned to the table, my dad raised his glass again. "To family," he said, I raced mine too and smiled. To endings. The next morning I drove into the city, the weight of last night's dinner still sitting heavy in my chest. The streets looked unfamiliar. Or maybe I just spent too many years looking backward. When I walked into my aunt's lawyer's office, the air smelled faintly of paper and lemon polish. Behind the desk sat Mr. Ellis, an older man with kind eyes and the sort of calm that comes from knowing secrets. He stood when he saw me. "Claire," he said, his voice gentle. "Your aunt would be proud of how you're handling all this." I smiled faintly. "I don't feel like I'm handling it. More like I'm surviving it." He nodded as if he understood more than I'd said. Then he opened a file and turned it toward me. "Your aunt anticipated that your parents might reappear once the inheritance became public. She made provisions." I leaned closer. "Provisions?" He slid a single document across the desk. It wasn't another bank form or asset transfer. It was something else. Adoption papers. My breath caught. "Wait, what?" He smiled softly. "Your aunt began the process to adopt you legally years ago. She wanted you to have her name, her protection, her legacy. But you turned 18 before it could be finalized. Still, she instructed me to complete it posthumously, symbolically, if you agreed." I stared at the paper, my throat tight. The word adoption blurred behind tears I didn't want to shed in front of anyone. Mr. Ellis continued, "If you sign these, your parents lose any legal standing to your estate. Completely. They can't contest a will, can't claim guardianship, can't touch a cent. Everything your aunt left will be yours and yours alone." I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper. "She really thought of everything, didn't she?" He nodded. "She loved you like her own, Claire. She wanted to make sure you'd never have to answer to anyone who didn't deserve you again." I took a deep breath and signed my name, not trembling, not angry, just certain. When the pen lifted from the page, something inside me shifted. It wasn't revenge yet. It was peace. The kind that comes when you realize you don't need anyone's permission to be free. Mr. Ellis sealed the envelope and said quietly, "I'll notify your parents when the time comes. You might want to be there." I hesitated, then smiled. "Oh, I'll be there. I want to see their faces when they realize what they've lost." As I stepped out into the cold morning air, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, the word family didn't sting. It didn't belong to them anymore. And they were about to find that out, the hard way. Mr. Ellis scheduled the meeting for Friday afternoon. He said it would be a formality. I knew better. When my parents arrived, they looked like they were walking into a real estate closing. Polished, polite, greedy. My mother wore pearls she couldn't afford 12 years ago. My father had that confident smirk he used to wear when he lied to my teachers about why I missed school. "Claire," my mom said brightly, kissing the air beside my cheek. "We're so glad to be included in all this." Included. The word almost made me laugh. We sat down in the glass-walled conference room. The city skyline gleamed behind Mr. Ellis as he shuffled through papers. My parents leaned forward eagerly, expecting numbers, accounts, bank transfers. He began, "As you know, Ms. Green's estate was substantial. But before any distribution, there's one final matter to acknowledge." My father nodded like a businessman. Of course. We just want what's best for Claire." I felt my jaw tighten. Mr. Ellis glanced at me briefly, the kind of glance that says, "Are you ready?" I nodded. He turned to them and said calmly, "Your daughter has elected to proceed with the completion of her late aunt's adoption process. Effective immediately, she will be legally recognized as Claire Green." Silence. Then my mother blinked, confused. I don't understand. She's already an adult. That doesn't change anything." Mr. Ellis folded his hands. "On the contrary. Legally, it severs all parental rights, both past and present. It also prevents any claim or contest to Ms. Green's inheritance." The air went still. My father's smirk cracked. He tried to recover. "Now wait a second, we're her parents. Blood relatives. You can't just—" "It's already done," Mr. Ellis said evenly. "Your daughter signed this morning. The court processed it an hour ago." My mother looked at me like I'd slapped her. "Claire, why would you do that?" I stared back steady. Because you already did. The day you left me. Her mouth opened but no sound came. My dad's fists tightened against the table. You're making a mistake, he said. We can fight this. Mr. Ellis slid a paper toward them. You're free to try. But this document makes it clear. You have no legal or financial ties to Ms. Green. At all. They looked at the paper but didn't touch it. My mom's voice broke. We just wanted a second chance. I stood. You had 13 years of them. Then I turned and walked out before the tears could start. Behind me I heard my father say quietly but venomously, "You think this is over? It's not." But for me it already was. The revenge wasn't in what I'd taken away from them, it was in what I'd reclaimed for myself. So, a part of me knew they wouldn't let it end there. And I was right. For a week after the meeting I didn't hear from them. No calls. No texts. No knocks on my door. I thought maybe they'd finally given up. But people like my parents don't disappear. They adapt. On the 8th day a letter arrived. Handwritten. My mom's looping script. Claire, we're sorry. We just wanted to make things right. We miss you. Please let's start over. Dinner. Just the three of us. I almost laughed. Dinner. Again. They'd lost legally so now they wanted to win emotionally. I should have ignored it. But part of revenge is patience and information. So I said yes. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown, the kind that pretends it's humble but charges $50 for salmon. My mom looked smaller than before, fragile even. My dad smiled too much. Claire, he said, we know we hurt you. We can't change the past but we can rebuild the future. The future. Always a transaction, never a feeling. I kept my tone soft. What does rebuilding look like to you? My mom reached across the table, touching my hand. Maybe just spending time together again. Getting to know each other. I let her hold my hand, briefly. Her fingers were cold. Of course, I said. We can try. They exhaled like they'd won something. Dinner felt like theater. My dad talked about family traditions we never had. My mom told stories rewritten to sound tender. I played the part. Nodding, smiling, pretending I didn't notice when their eyes flickered toward the gold bracelet on my wrist or when they slipped in small questions like, "So, do you manage all the finances yourself? Or, your aunt's company, you still have those shares, right?" It was almost sad how predictable they were. When dessert came, my dad lifted his glass. To second chances. I smiled, matching his tone. To honesty. He blinked, caught off guard. Then he laughed. Of course. By the time the check came I'd already paid it. Claire, my mom protested, you didn't have to. I wanted to, I said. It's what family does, right? They smiled, mistaking kindness for weakness. That night I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the city lights tremble in the distance. They thought they were reeling me in again. They thought I still wanted their approval. But I wasn't that abandoned little girl anymore. And this time I wasn't just going to let them walk away, I was going to let them expose themselves. So when they invited me to dinner at their place the following week, I said yes again. Only this time I'd bring something with me, a quiet witness, a camera hidden in my bag. Because the truth they were trying so hard to hide. It was about to speak louder than all their fake apologies combined. Their house looked almost the same as I remembered. White siding, chipped porch steps. The wind chime my mother bought from a gas station still clinking in the cold air. The difference was me. This time I wasn't walking in as a child begging to be loved. I was walking in as someone they underestimated. My dad opened the door, arms wide. Our girl's home. The words hit like a slap. Our girl. I smiled politely and stepped inside. The house smelled like cheap candles and desperation. Photos lined the hallway. Old pictures of vacations that didn't include me, birthdays that came after they'd left. They'd rewritten their own history without me in it. Dinner was already set. My mom had outdone herself. Roast chicken, wine, perfectly folded napkins. I placed my bag carefully beside my chair. Inside it, my phone recorded everything. Hidden but listening. They started off sweet. Questions about my new life, compliments about how proud they were. But then slowly the conversation curved. So, my dad began, his tone casual. We've been talking about the old house, the one your aunt left you. Big place for one person. I nodded. It is. My mom smiled tightly. We were thinking, maybe we could move in for a while. Help out. Keep you company. I took a slow sip of wine. Help out with what? With everything, she said. Bills, maintenance, business decisions. You don't have to do it all alone, sweetheart. I looked at her, really looked. The same woman who once left me on a front porch with a single duffel bag, now pretending to care about my loneliness. My dad leaned forward. It's what family's for. I tilted my head. But we're not, remember? Legally, I'm not your daughter anymore. He froze, his jaw tightening. That's just paperwork. No, I said softly. That's protection. The silence that followed was thick. My mom tried to smile again, her voice brittle. Claire, we're just trying to find our place again. You had your place, I said. You left it 12 years ago. The mask slipped. My father's tone sharpened. You wouldn't have any of this if it weren't for us. We raised you. We gave you everything. I laughed quietly. Everything? You gave me abandonment. And somehow it turned into freedom. His hand slammed the table. My mom flinched. You think this money makes you better than us? I stood calm. No. It makes me independent. There's a difference. My phone, still recording, caught every word. When I reached the door, my mom whispered, Claire, please. We just want to be a family again. I turned back. Families don't show up for fortunes. They show up for people. Then I walked out into the night, leaving the recording running in my bag, just long enough to capture my father's final words. Muttered under his breath but clear as glass. She'll regret this. One way or another. 2 days later, Mr. Ellis called. Claire, he said, your parents have contacted my office. They're attempting to dispute the adoption. They're claiming emotional coercion. I almost smiled. Of course they were. When manipulation fails, desperation takes its place. I have something you'll want to hear, I said. And I sent him the recording. He listened in silence. Then softly he said, You've done this perfectly. The following week we met at the courthouse. A gray building that looked as cold as every memory I'd tried to forget. My parents stood across the hallway from me, whispering with a new lawyer, the kind that charges by the minute and wins by intimidation. My mother tried to meet my eyes. I didn't look away. Inside the hearing room, everything was sterile. White walls, a long oak table, fluorescent lights humming above us. The judge, an older woman with silver hair, looked up from the files. So, she said, Mr. and Mrs. Heiress claim emotional duress and demand inclusion in the late Miss Green's estate. Mr. Ellis nodded respectfully. Your Honor, we have evidence to the contrary. He pressed play. The room filled with the sound of my father's voice, calm at first, then sharp, bitter, unmistakably his. You think this money makes you better than us? She'll regret this. One way or another. The judge's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. My mother began to cry, quiet, careful tears. My father stared straight ahead, his jaw locked. Mr. Ellis continued, This recording was made during a private dinner initiated by the plaintiffs under false pretenses. It demonstrates intent to manipulate, not reconcile. The silence that followed was louder than any shouting could have been. Finally the judge spoke. I've seen greed destroy families before, but rarely with such clarity. The adoption stands. The estate remains solely with Ms. Green. And I suggest you both consider the meaning of parent before you call yourselves that again. Her gavel hit the desk like thunder. My parents didn't move at first. Then my father turned, eyes burning with something between anger and humiliation. You think this makes you strong? He hissed. You'll always be alone. I stood. Maybe. But at least I'll never owe my soul to anyone again. I walked past them, slow, steady, out of that sterile room and into the bright light of the hallway. For the first time I didn't feel like running from my past. I'd faced it, stripped it of power, and left it behind. Outside the air smelled like rain. I tilted my face toward the sky, let the drops fall, and whispered, It's done. But revenge, I realized, isn't about hurting someone. It's about healing the part of yourself that no longer needs them to hurt. Still, I had one more thing left to do, not for them but for me. One final goodbye. A month passed. The calls stopped. The noise faded. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like freedom. I moved back into my aunt's old house. My house now. The garden she loved had overgrown a little, but the roses still bloomed stubbornly the way she used to say I did too. Every morning I made tea in her chipped blue cup and watched sunlight move through the window like forgiveness. And yet one thing still tugged at me. Not anger. Not regret. Just something unfinished. So I sat at her old writing desk and pulled out a sheet of paper. The same kind she used for letters she never sent. And I began to write. That you once told me that family is everything. I spent years trying to earn that truth, twisting myself into someone you could love. But family isn't built from blood. It's built from presence. From showing up when no one's watching. You didn't lose your daughter when you left me. You lost her when you came back for money instead of forgiveness. I hope someday you understand that. I've forgiven you, but I don't owe you anything. Not my time, not my pain, and definitely not my silence. I wish you peace even if it never includes me. Claire. I sealed the letter and mailed it to their last known address. No return label, no signature, no anger left inside. That night I drove down to the ocean. The waves were wild and endless, pulling the moonlight into ribbons across the surface. I sat on the sand with my shoes off and the wind in my hair, and for the first time since I was 13, I didn't feel like someone who'd been abandoned. I felt like someone who'd survived. I thought about my aunt, the woman who gave me a name, a home, and a future she'd never get to see. I whispered, "Thank you," to the dark horizon, hoping somehow she could hear it. My phone buzzed once, a new voicemail. My mother's voice, trembling. "We got your letter. We're sorry, even if it's too late." I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, but because I didn't need it anymore. I turned off my phone, leaned back, and let the sound of the waves swallow everything that came before. For once, the story wasn't about them. It was about me, finally whole, finally free, finally mine. And that's how I learned that revenge isn't destruction. It's reclamation. It's the moment you stop bleeding for people who never learned how to heal you. It's peace.